Alrighty. So today I got banned from the Unison League Reddit, and one of their reasonings was that I should take care to ensure that the content itself is verifiably true and accurate, and then they go on to claim that there are a bunch of good resources. So clearly, I must not be making accurate or good content, at least in their eyes. So today I figured I would talk about Quartz and everything that you need to know about the Quartz system. So Quartz is here. You can create Quartz. It takes 10 of these Quartz fragments to create one. Here are the rates for each. You can get SSR, SR, R, and normal. Then you have your SSR Quartz, also takes 10, and this is the rate here. And then you have your ultra rare Quartz, which takes 10, and 100% to get an ultra rare. So what does Quartz do? I'll go over that first. So Quartz can do a bunch of different things. Quartz can increase your stats. So for example, this one increases attack for relics, which is horrible because you want magic attack for relics. And this one's pretty good. Attack for scythes, specifically just fire elemental scythes. So it doesn't apply to water scythes. It doesn't apply to any other element of scythe. And it also doesn't apply to lances. Fire lances won't affect fire lances. It only applies to fire scythes, and it only changes the attack stat. So what else can you get? Well, you can get defense gear. Oh, and I should also point out here, I'll just leave it like this. So for attack stats, you can get 5 or 8%. When you're upgrading from an SSR, always upgrade these 5% ones, because if you upgrade a 4%er, then I don't believe that the 4% will upgrade to an 8%. Now, keep in mind, just to be fully transparent, I have not personally tested this, so I'm not 100% sure, but that is my judgment as to what I think is happening. For the defense gear, you're always looking at 10%. This is always going to be 10%. And for the specific resistances, you're always looking at 10 resistance. And for the Unison down, you're always looking at 10% as well. Keep in mind that specifically for the uni defense gear, or for the uni down percentage, this is only for a specific type. So for example, this is only for physical wind damage. So if somebody throws a magical wind damage uni, this won't apply. So unfortunately, the uni down is kind of mediocre in my opinion. There are absolutely meta monsters, and there are instances where this would be extremely good, but keep in mind that it is a little bit harder to stack. So let me also go over what are the caps. So the maximum that you can get at any point is 25% of the stat, 50% of the resistance, 50 resistance, and then minus 25% on an attack, or on a unison attack down. So those are the caps. You can't go above that. And I can prove that you can't go above that. So I have 2 pieces of gear here, and both of them are magic. We're going to be testing the magic defense on these gears, and they're both water and they're both clothing. So you can see clothing here, clothing there. And so let's go in, and I'll stat specifically for water, clothing, and magic defense. And so I have a bunch of these. So let's start with this one. So this one is, just to be completely transparent. This one is 10%. So we should see a stat boost in these pieces of gear here. And we do. So 47,000 and 38,000. If you don't see a stat boost, top right here, you can click on this guy and it'll show you, if it's off, then it won't show the stat boost. And if it is on, it'll show the stat boost change. Then we can see the 10% is boosts it to 51,000 and 41,000. So keep those numbers in mind. And we're going to apply this guy. So this one, people don't know this. This is a pretty rare piece of ultra rare gear, but the second stat when you upgrade an SSR to an ultra rare, the second stat is completely random and can be identical. So for example, this gear is clothing, water, defense, magic defense, right? This is also clothing, water, magic defense. So this is the 20% boost right here. So here's the 20% boost. And now we're at 57 and 46K. Okay, keep those in mind. 57 and 57 and 46K. Now, if we apply another 10%er, this one would be the 40%, we should see no stat change. And as you can see, 47K and 46K respectively. So we don't see any stat change past 25%. And I could remove both of these. We still see the stat change at 20%. So this is the 20%, right? I had 10% and 10%. And you still see a stat change from 20% when you add the third one to the 30%. We're at 55 and 44K. And then when we add the last one to go up to 30%, we see the second stat change. So we see 47 and 46 respectively. And you can see how much you're gaining in stats by just turning this off and on. So this would apply to up to 10 pieces of gear because you can equip up to 10 pieces of gear. So let's do the math. How exactly does it work? So we're going to start with this piece of gear. It is fully maxed and it's currently giving me 185,255. So if we said, all right, 185,255 times, and I have for this piece of gear specifically, I have a 2%. Let's unequip these. I have a 2%. So this is a neutral piece of gear. It's a lance. So let's see. I equip the 2%. So if I say, okay, what is the new stat supposed to look like? It would be 88,000 if it was off these base stats. So let's see. But it's not. Now it's at 186,000. So what's going on there? Why is it not increasing it by 2%? Well, each class has a bunch of bonuses that it gets. And each Xenos gear also gives a bunch of bonus stats and other things like that. And so what we're seeing here is the difference between boosted stats and non-boosted stats. So if we instead multiplied it by 0.02, this would be 2%. We should see about 3K difference, but we're not. We're not even seeing close to that. And really what we're seeing is, let's see, turn this off. So what we're seeing is something like, here, we're going to turn that back on. What is the stat change? 186,931 minus 185,255. So we're seeing about half that, 1,676. So what's going on there? Well, each stat, which you can see on Limapedia, each weapon has specific stats, attack and magic attack, when it's unmodified. So this is 83331, so 83,331 and 26,000. That is the stat that's being modified here. If we do 83331 times 0.02, we can see that is the stat that's being modified. And the difference in stats is probably due to the plus 99. That's my guess as to why it's not a perfect match. But this shows you exactly how much is at stake. So this is it's based off of the unmodified stat here, not off of your modified stat. That's why you're not going to be seeing massive changes. So let's assume that you had 9 pieces of gear that were all the same exact type. And I'm going to show you what the max stat would be like in order to determine, is it worth it to go for, basically, what is it worth going for? Is it worth going for stats? Is it worth going for resistances? Is it worth going for the uni attack, like the percent down for specific damage? Is it worth going for that one? So assuming that we had this is the change, right? So this is how you would do the math. You would do 83331 times the 0.25, right? Because we can max out at 25%. We already established that 25% is the max stat that you can get. And then times 9. And the reason why we're doing times 9 instead of times 10 is because you would pretty much always want to have a Xenos gear. And the same is true for your defense as well, but that's not necessarily true. It kind of depends on the class that you're picking, but usually speaking, you would only be able to max out at 9 for these. So you'd be able to get a total of 187,000 in attack stat. Let's look at how much you'd be able to get for a defense stat. And keep in mind as well, this is not including 45 cost gear. So it will be slightly higher for 45 cost gear. And as the gear increases in cost, the base stats will also increase. So I'm just showing you how to do the math so that in a couple years from now, this still applies and you can understand what the stat change is going to be like. So keep in mind as well, defense gear has lower stats. So as you can see, 69 and 0 and 21 for these guys. So 69,336 times 0.25 times, and I'm going to do 10 just because you can get 45 cost gear, but also it is technically possible. Usually you wouldn't be able to get 10, right? Because you would want to equip your Xenos gear or some other forms of gear. So usually you wouldn't be able to get 10 defense gear, but just for the sake of the fact that you might be able to get defense 10, we'll just assume that it's 10 and we'll just call it like that. So 172 plus the 185,000 from before leaves you about with 350,000 in stats, roughly. I mean, keep in mind, if you have one piece of gear that's lower, this can drop pretty fast. So, and you would need 10 pieces of basically the exact same type of gear. It's really difficult to build this. So not only is this extremely difficult to build, especially for your weapons, but it is also really difficult to build for your defense gear. This is extremely difficult to accomplish, but technically you could be at 350K. Now, of course, this could be higher because you can also do the exact same thing for stuff like your helms, and you can get even higher stats. You could probably even get up to like 400, 500K. But at that point, you're just showing it off for gear score. You're not actually doing it for a PvE set or a PvP set. And the reason is because there's a lot of pieces of gear that you would want to equip in both of those instances that wouldn't necessarily relate to a specific stat that you could boost. So for example, if I was going for 10 pieces of magic, 10 pieces of clothing and I was trying to boost the magic damage on the magic defense on them, and they were all waters. If I equipped something like this, then that would decrease it from 10 to 9 because this is my reflection reduction XXL piece of gear. So I would want one of these for most quests. If I'm in something like guild battle, for example, I would want something, Or in Colosseum, I would want something like this, right? That gives me opening as ward. This basically leaves you with 1 HP. So if you get hit with 100 billion, you would be able to live with 1 HP once, and then it goes away. But this is the 31 cost gear, so it's really weak, and it only comes as a neutral gear. There hasn't been another gear since then that does this. There's not a lot of this type of gear. Another piece of gear is Reliance State. This piece of gear here. Here, I'll just show this one. Reliance State nullifies Unison gauge reduction 1 time. If you equip this piece of gear, this only comes as a win piece of gear. So then, okay, you can't equip. So can you see what I'm talking about? As you actually build a real set, the ability to get a really high amount of stats just kind of goes out the window. I think most people would be able to max out around 200K, but I think that I'm just going to leave it at here for 350K as the maximum that you could get just in general. But keep in mind, you can go higher than this. You could be absolutely much higher than this as far as gear score if you were just showing off your gear. So, that's how that works. Now, every time that you equip a piece of gear, you can use it, but only for specific places if you wish. So there is this number here, this 35 points, that refers to the number of instances that you can use the quartz until it runs out and it just turns off. These you can select for specific times that you want to use them. So if you don't want to always use them, then for me, I just have it on raids right now. If I wanted to turn it on for everything, I could if I wanted to. But that's how that works. When you are going to quartz, okay, how do you... Oh, and I also wanted to show you this. So when you're actually going into a quest, let's say that I wanted to do this quest, it'll show you over here how many points you have. The max, I believe, is 999 points that you can have. And you can turn it on from here, and it'll glow like this if you have it active. And if you don't have it active, it'll be grayed out like that. So quartz, how do you get those? Let's just turn everything on like this. So when you sell ultra rare stuff, you get 50 of them. When you get 3 ultra rare quartz fragments. So you can remember at the beginning, it takes 10 to spawn. So you get 30% back when you get something garbage. And this decreases. So 25 and 12 for selling SSR, and then 10 and 9 for selling SR, and 5 and 6 for selling R, and wow. And 3 and 3 for selling neutral gear. What type of gear do you want to sell? You basically always want to sell all of your N and R gear and basically only upgrade SR and SSR pieces of gear. That's basically it. Statistically speaking, that would be your best bet. And it's really complicated as to how you can get those numbers, but suffice it to say, that's the easiest way to do things, is just sell your rare and your normal gear and just upgrade SR and SSR gear. So what does that look like? So each piece of gear has a certain number attached to it. This is 60. And in order to upgrade this, you would need to select 60 pieces of gear here. So I can just show it to you real fast. Just as an example, I'll upgrade this 5%. Oh, and keep in mind, there are multiples. So like, for example, this is a 5% and this is a 4% when it comes to attack stats. I'm just going to be fully transparent. I don't know if the 4% or the 5% is the one that'll get the 8. Keep in mind, when you're at an ultra rare, you can get 5% or 8%. But my instinct, right, is that you would get 8% from upgrading from 5%. That's my instinct, but I'm not 100% sure about it. We can test it right now, actually. At least we can test one. I'm going to upgrade this one for the wind scythe, and we'll upgrade it. And this is a 5%er. So now I just turn on everything, and we'll just select 60 pieces of gear, blah, 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 blah. Oh, so it upgrades to 20, and then you keep going. Just keep going. And then we're at 40. And then we're at... And then we're at 60. Oh, this one just upgrades to 5%. And it goes to, it upgrades to the ultra rare right away. Oh, look at that. Look. There you go. So it upgrades to 8%. And you can, I didn't have one of these before. This is perfect. You can get double 8%. I wanted to show that off. Where is that piece of gear that I just upgraded? Oh, come on. No, I can't find. Oh, there it is. All right, double 8%, baby. Let's go. So 8% and 8%. Unfortunately, that is a magic attack on Axe, so that kind of sucks. But it just proves that you can get double 8%. I didn't have one of these before, so this is really nice to show. So that is that. That is upgrading. And keep in mind, every single piece of gear is slightly different. So SR is 50, and you can only upgrade with other SR gears. And the attack stat for these is not different. It's always 3%. As you can see, 3% all the way down. There is no 2% or something like that. So when you're upgrading from SR to SSR, you should be able to distinguish between the good gear and the bad gear, so that you can upgrade higher cost gear. Because you don't want to upgrade a 4%er and then be stuck at 5% when you could get 8%. You see what I mean? And then the same thing for rare, it's 40, and for normal, it's 20. So it's just not worth it to upgrade the normals or the rares. It's only worth it to upgrade SRs and the SSRs. So that goes over pretty much all of that. And let's go over, you can get them from your daily missions. I already completed mine, but just so that you're aware, you can get them from daily missions. And then you can also get them from selling. So there appears to be no difference between selling weapons and armors and selling monsters. I'll show you that. So you get 130 for a 45 cost gear, and 130 for your monsters as well. You probably don't want to be selling high level monsters. I would keep it mostly to lower cost gear, but I'll show you this as well. So you got 130 for 45 cost. You get 120 for 44 cost. You get 100 for 42, 90 for 41, 80 for 40, 70 for 39 cost gear, 60 for 38 cost gear, and 50 for 37 cost gear. Now it appears that you can't sell anything other than 37 cost gear. So if I try to sell this piece of gear here, it doesn't work. Can't sell it. And I know I don't have it on any stats. You also cannot sell stuff like this. Oh, actually, you can. But there's no point. Like, why would you... Sorry. I made a mistake. Earlier when I was looking at this, I didn't choose a higher piece of gear. But apparently you can sell these. Keep in mind it's at 60. So why would you not ultra rare this first, right? If you just maxed it out and reforged it, sorry, that's my bad. That instead of getting 60 like it was giving before, it should be giving, what was it, 100? 120? I'll take a look at it. I didn't have the numbers memorized. Now, same piece of gear. Where did it go? 43 cost. There it is. Boom, 110. So we went from 60 to 110 just for turning it from an SSR to an ultra rare. So keep in mind, you always want ultra rare stuff before you sell it. All right. So let's talk about my opinions on what you should go for, what is worth it, what is not worth it, stats wise, stuff like that. So obviously you always want to stay on main stat. So for example, if you're doing a lance, and I also wanted to point this out, every single piece of gear has slightly different stats. So for example, the lance that I was talking about is 83,000, but generally speaking, swords and axes have less stats than scythes and lances. As you can see, 78,000 as opposed to the 83. The same applies for books and staves. So you can see the staff here is 81,000 and the relic here, or the book here, is 80,000. So slightly different stats for every single thing. That is worth keeping notice of. So for what classes is this beneficial for, and what should you focus? If you are a dual scaling class, like a gun, dual blades, bow, stuff like that, your base attack and magic attack stats are going to be so low that the percentage is just not worth it. I mean, what would this be? You could get both 25. Let's compare. What was it? Like 185 is like 185 total stats for just lances. So assuming that we did one of these, let's do the math. 54,823 times 0.25 times 9 times 2. So you get a total of 246,000 in stats. You know, that's actually pretty good. However, you have to keep in mind that you are allocating more of your slot points, like slot placements, towards that. Actually, that's not actually that bad. I take back what I said. If you're dual scaling, technically speaking, you would have more stats overall. It's kind of hard to say though, because you would need, like, dual blades. I know slightly stack up slightly differently because they have weird stats most of the time. This one's nice. Okay, let's go to a normal piece of gear. Generally, these have wonky stats. Yeah, like 51 and 52. Those are significantly less. Well, you would still need really excellent ultra rare gear, right? You would need to upgrade 3 times 6. You would need to allocate basically twice as much just for your attack stats. I guess it's not bad. It's probably not that bad. You could probably do it. So as far as stats, it doesn't really benefit one class more than the other a whole lot. I would say overall, the stats wise, you would get more stats if you were actually a dual blade or a gunner or something like that. But I don't like the fact that a lot of these, so just as an example, like you can have a relic and a book in this slot. And it's really, really difficult to get 10 or 9 of the exact same type. I know for me personally, I have tons. Why did I just upgrade that? I meant to click select base. So I know for me personally, I have a ton of different weapons when it just comes to a single element, like that. See, I have scythes and some lances. It's hard to get just pure lances. Same thing here, scythes and some lances. And for a lot of things, I use these to fill in stats. So getting good attack stats, getting high attack stats with the quartz is hard. It's quite hard. I would say that this is more geared toward whales, but two classes benefit from this a lot. Dual blades and the mages specifically. So if you scale dual blades, you can only do dual blades. So that makes it a lot easier. Same thing with your staves. You can only get staves for mages. So that makes it a lot easier to stack these stats. So I would say for all classes, you should go for some amount of stats, even if it's a little bit. But it's hard to get 10 or even 9 of these types of gear in a specific way, you know? So definitely dual blades and staves get the advantage when it comes to quartz stats. But that doesn't mean that it's not possible. You can absolutely build a good set that has all of one type of gear. For defense gear, I do think it's a little bit easier. You should be able to get a solid lineup of at least 8 pieces of gear that are all pretty much the exact same. So, and then on your other stat, like for example, if you did it for clothing, then for your helms, you would want to put a bunch of your regular stuff like your resurrection and your opening gears like these. You would want to put a bunch of those on the other defense stat so that you can still make a good set. But I think defense stats are probably a little bit better because overall you're getting more stats like for a if total attack stats, right? So for a lancer, you would scale off of attack and defense. We looked at it earlier. It was like 300. It was like 300. Yeah, 57,000. Whereas if you are just like in total stats for attack and defense, you're looking at 357,000 for a number of attack stats for things like dual blades and guns and bows. You're only looking at 24,000. So they do kind of get the short end of the stick there, but they can still dual scale. And it's probably easier for them to get higher stats because you only need to worry about your weapons and your armors can be kind of on their own. In order to benefit from this and get attack and defense stats or magic attack and magic defense bonus stats, you would need to focus on twice as much for most classes. I think that's pretty unrealistic. I am also not a big fan of the resistant. Let's see if I can find one of them, or I can just. I'm not a big fan of these guys either. And the reason is, what, do I not have any ultra rare? I thought I had ultra rare gear. Huh. Oh, there it is. Okay. So I'm not a big fan of these, the damage taken down either, because it is for a specific element, for a specific type. So it's physical or magical for a specific element. And it goes up to 25, so that's pretty good. The problem that I have with it is the likelihood of you getting, like, for example, most teams will throw something like time, star, dark, light. And so you could absolutely use it for your time gear, but you would need to gear it towards specific types of monsters that are super popular. Like a lot of guilds throw this monster. Why is it not showing up? There we go. A lot of guilds throw Mephisto, but this only does magic attack. So you would be in a pickle if somebody threw something like this that does physical attack. You see what I'm saying? Because you, it's. I think that just to put it simply, I think that that specific type of stat, this damage taken from uni down, is good if you're gearing for specific elements that are meta at this moment. But keep in mind, this isn't a long-term thing. You won't be able to use this forever because the meta changes, new monsters come out, new monsters become super powerful or become killing monsters. So you'll have to change this all the time. That's why for a free-to-play player, it might be harder to get a ton of good gear like this, but I do see the merit of it. Getting 25% damage down is pretty dang good. It's pretty incredible. So that is good. Lastly, I wanted to talk about the stats themselves, like different things that you should be getting and what you should be focused on. So I think that for the most part, you would want things like abstraction resistance is really good. I personally like the resistances the most. I think that you'll get the most out of the resistances, and I believe you can get uni. I believe this is the one. No, that's pressure. Actually, pressure resistance is pretty darn good as well. This must be the one. Yeah, prohibit uni resistance. So I would say prohibit uni resistance. Pressure is something that allows you to swap. So if you have pressure on you, you can't swap out. So I think uni resistance is really good. Pressure resistance is really good. I think that slumber, rejection, insanity, and then abstraction are all really good as well. This is what I would prioritize for resistances, and I do believe that resistances are the best. I think that you'll get the most out of resistances, and I think that most people will benefit the most from resistances. It is really annoying when you go into a quest and you get hit with a bunch of status ailments. So for me personally, getting 50 resistance is really solid. I think for most players, you should focus on resistance. But other than that, if you have one good set, you can boost your attack for something, or your defense for something like guild battles, or if you're gearing towards a specific thing, specific prevention of death for specific throws, the uni down is fantastic as well. Just keep in mind that you'll have to update that more regularly. So that's a pretty big, my opinions on everything. What I would prioritize for most players is resistances, then attack and defense stats, and then monster resistance, the monster damage down. That's the order that I would do it in, but I would keep in mind that a lot of players aren't going to be able to reach good attack stats or defense stats bonuses. So I do recognize that it is something, it's like a long-term goal when you start the game or when you're making your sets to have a group of 10 or a group of 9 that all are the same stats and then getting 25% for those. So that pretty much goes over everything for Quartz. I know that there's a lot. If you have any questions, let me know. And yeah, I'll catch you guys later.